morning, Gamecock fans. Today is Monday, May 19th, the year of our Lord 2025. This is Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Thanks for joining us today, or me today, right here every Monday through Friday. On Coffee, won't have one next Monday. It's Memorial Day. Said Labor Day. Great start. Somebody's got a case of the Mondays. So yeah, no show next week. Gonna probably not have a morning show or a show as well on Monday, just because we take holidays off at Chief Sports, thebigspur.com, all that good stuff. Good weekend for the Gamecock softball team, winning North Florida. Gosh, a lot of people got nervous when North Florida was in the regional, and they ended up being pretty tough. They put Virginia out, but the Gamecocks cruised to an 8-0 victory. The Gamecocks will play UCLA Friday, 7 p.m. at Beckham Field. UCLA, now of the Big Ten, has to come across the country to play the Gamecocks for the right to go to Oklahoma City in the Women's College World Series. So exciting times for that program. Ashley Chastain Woodard, in her first year, has done a remarkable job, as we all know. And they'll talk about it on the morning show. John Whittle is on today. Mike Morgan is in today. Jamie Bradford and all that, followed by Phil and I with the show. But the UCLA Bruins are coming to town. Like I said, it's weird to call them a Big Ten school, but they are. And the Diamond Sports folks, I think the addition of the LA schools has really helped Big Ten baseball and softball and all those sports that you play in warm weather. So interesting enough, I was curious to see how this would work out for those schools, and thought it would be a boon for the Big Ten, and it certainly has been. Gamecock baseball won Thursday in a weird way over number one LSU, and then the Tigers took the other two series 8-1, 7-3. This record is the record, the worst record ever in SEC play. 6-24, 6-27 if you count the quick sweep with Clemson against power conference opponents. 28-28 overall. The Gamecocks play the Florida Gators in the SEC tournament, the 10th seed. Yeah, that team's a 10 seed. So this league, there we go again. But single elimination in Hoover this year, so anything can happen. But certainly the baseball conversation, I think, is probably going to get a lot better in the off season. But they'll talk baseball on the morning show, as always, and we may touch on it on the show later. Women's golf, I wanted to mention this. I know a lot of people are golf fans out there. The Gamecocks are currently 8th in Carlsbad, California at La Costa NCAA Championships. They will tee off today for a chance to get into match play, if I'm reading this correctly. First time I've given a women's golf update, but certainly happy for that team. The men continue on as well, I believe, this weekend. So lots going on around Gamecock land with spring sports this week. And football recruiting continues. We're on the cusp of official visit season. That starts at the end of the month, right after Memorial Day. Also, as we all know, per Shane Beamer, Vicari Swain will be back with the team. So all that is over. He's back with the team in a couple of weeks when they reconvene for what should be a important summer for this program. A lot of new faces, a lot of guys that need to develop to get ready to help them this year. And last summer was pretty successful in that regard when you kind of look at the physical shape of some of the individual players. Luke Day and his staff do an outstanding job and really had a resurgent year last year. Sometimes the strength coach, when you have a lot of injuries, gets blamed. My thing with the strength coach, if I've had a criticism through the years, is that at times maybe the Gamecocks didn't look as strong. And I thought last offseason that was a key. They needed to be a stronger football team, and they became one. So, mission accomplished with that. And they need another good year in that department because you have a lot of younger players. This roster, as I've talked about, skews younger than it was. But I've looked around at some other schools, and just about everybody. I mean, the word on the street is young, and a lot of that's because of the COVID year, and you had a lot of older players. Those folks are kind of cycling out. You also have eligibility, extra years, that kind of thing. But we're kind of getting back to normal a little bit after everybody got a red shirt in 2020, and you have guys that have been in college 7 years and all that. One guy that's not, Rasul Faison, I have no update on that. But again, Phil and I kind of went through the situation with him. Looking at it, I mean, gosh, the guy's only played 3 years of college football if you include the JUCO season. He only had 2 years at Utah State, so I don't know what the holdup is there, folks. It's the NCAA. You can't predict what their reasoning is or a line of thought. Chances are it's not going to make much sense. But there's a lot of precedent out there. I'm pretty sure he'll be eligible. One of the college football blog slash, there's all these Instagram accounts that cover college football that are entertaining, and I call them I guess one of the streams in the ecosystem of list season. They had Rasul Faison. They were ranking RB1s, first team running backs in the SEC, and Rasul's predicted to be the starter. He was ranked like third in the league, fourth, something like that. So there are people out there that really think he's good. Internally, they think he's good too. I think he's the starter. I think I don't know. Here's the bottom line with the running backs to me. I think I underestimated him a little bit just based on anytime you have a player that everybody you talk to that's been at a scrimmage, been at a practice, inside the building, outside the building, kids on bikes. That's a quote from a movie from the 90s. Anybody, they all say, hey, this guy's good. Then most of the time he's good. You do hear at different points from different people about other players, and it's inconsistent. It's like, well, I've heard this about this guy or this about this guy. So you weigh all that, and you kind of use that to formulate an informed opinion along with what your eyeballs see. So Faison, is one of those guys that it's universal feedback with him. And so he's an important guy. But I think you can have more than one, more than one thing can be right. I also like the backup running backs. If he does start, I like Matt Fuller. I like Jawarn Howell quite a bit. I think those two players have a chance to be really good. I think Matt Fuller had a good spring after a slow start. Jawarn Howell, people are a little bit down on him out in Fanland. And I don't say that insultingly. I say that because I love the fans, but that's a good way to describe it, Fanland. They're a little down on him because of the fumble in the bowl. And I think that's created like this narrative where he's got some fumbling issue. He didn't fumble. Other than that, everybody fumbles. Rocket Sanders fumbled a bunch. Lenore Sellers fumbled so much he probably that's one thing he's got to quit doing. So I don't know, if we hold that against him. That was a frustrating game. Obviously, he was trying to get upfield after catching a pass, but I like him. I think he's a big, fast back with a bright future. So you got to have depth, even if you have a clear-cut starter. I mean, Rocket Sanders didn't miss too much time last year. And then there's Oscar Attaway, who's still there too, and that is a seventh-year guy. So Carolina, let's say Faison and Attaway are the top two backs. That could be the oldest running back duo in college football. I'd be surprised if there was one older, because I think they both would be pretty old. Although Faison's hadn't played as long as Attaway. Attaway's going to the seventh year of college football. Wow. So we'll see what happens with all that. I remain of the position that I would be stunned if Faison is not eligible. I just can't see, given that they got Darren Heitner involved, I just can't see them saying, oh no, he's done, when you've got other players, including Diego Pavia, who have played more college football than this guy. I think what they're trying to say is he enrolled as a gray shirt at Marshall early in his career, like 2019. He never played. He may have practiced. And they're trying to say his clock started then. I think this is my opinion, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the guy never played. He never played. I mean, I don't understand. But I'd sue him in federal court if they you don't get what you want, and hopefully they will. I'd sue the crap out of them. I just it's to that point where it's common sense. If they do deny him, I think it has much more to do with them not having a lot of power to do things, and they're trying to just bow up, which is stupid for an organization like that. They may screw the house settlement up for bowing up, over this walk-on thing. I'm like, golly, we don't want to put 40 people on the cross-country team. I thought you were all about women's sports and all, the women's cross-country team. Those are the teams they're like, it's going to be too expensive. I thought that's what you were all about. Ridiculous, right? All the every time I see an NCAA commercial, I get sick. I'm just like, man, stop. This is the kind of lack of common sense, clueless failure to read the room that got you into this mess. I mean, could you not see that? I mean, you could go back in time and just say, all right, well, we're gonna let you have YouTube channels. We're gonna let you take part in the video game. We're gonna let you hold camps and sign autographs. That's all you had to do. All you had to do. And then they said, okay, well, now it's free for all NIL, and there's loopholes, and collectives can go pay whatever. And so that's why we have what we have. It's insane. I've never seen anything like this. So, college sports, ladies and gentlemen, NCAA. We kind of knew. I mean, a lot of people call them corrupt. I don't know that they're corrupt so much as just clueless because of who runs it. I mean, it's just like, can you be any dumber? Strategically, their lawyers are bad too. I don't think their lawyers are worth a flip either. But their lawyers have to do what their clients ask, and I think that's sort of ridiculous. And now they're talking all about the playoff, and I think we're going to talk today about why the ACC needs to shut up with this. We need 3 bids. When in the history of that league for the past decades, for the whole playoff era, have you looked and gone, man, 3 of the top 10 teams in the country are in the ACC? And I'm not talking about the polls. I'm talking about truly when you look at it. Maybe in 16, when I guess the 3rd place team in the SEC, or the team that got the Sugar Bowl, was Auburn. They were like 7-4, 8-4. That was not a great year in the SEC. But and the ACC was pretty good because they have quarterbacks. And they have quarterbacks this year. But the playoff discussion is not about this year. This year's set. It's going to be 12 teams. You'll have a stupid committee. They'll pick the teams, hopefully based on good criteria, and watch them change it this year. See, here's my little Gamecock theory, right? There'll be multiple 10-2 teams that are vying from the SEC to get in. Carolina will be kind of on the other side of that tiebreaker. They won't get to Atlanta, but they'll be 10-2, and they'll put a 9-3 Big Ten team in over Carolina because of strength of schedule. I don't know how, but probably take a lot of teams on Carolina's schedule tanking and not being as good. But damn, I mean, come on, that's what scares me about this year, is because a lot of it's not up to your team. A lot of it's up to fate. And you could argue last season, the actions of others, like not the opposing team, not the players, the refs, and then the committee, were the reason Carolina wasn't in the playoff. It's just the opinion of others. That's why perception matters in college football, folks. We talked about that the other day. By the way, thanks for listening to Friday's episode. I thought it was really good stuff for me to talk about. I enjoy talking about recruiting, and 2027 class looking pretty good. But today's topic was something that everybody likes to discuss, the elusive wide receiver 1 conversation. And this conversation drives me crazy. I think that, but I mean, I play fantasy football, I was in two leagues last year. One of them, I actually fell asleep during the draft. So I got put on auto pick, and that team wasn't very good. But the other one, I'm in with Mike Morgan and some others. I did pretty well. I think I finished first, and I think Mike beat me in the playoffs, so by 1 point. So that was disappointing. But I play fantasy football. I understand what that is. And I understand it's very nice to have a go to receiver. But I also understand, and you look back again, I look back at that the from 2011 to 2012. Okay, Carolina finished 11-2. We talked about this on the show in 2011. Great year. A lot of great players on that team. Melvin Ingram, Marcus Lattimore, Alshon Jeffrey, Garcia. Shaw took over for Garcia, beat Nebraska in the Citrus Bowl. Well, they lost Gilmore and Jeffrey and Ingram after that year. That's three really good players. I mean, three of the best of all time in the history of the program. I mean, Stephon Gilmore, Alshon Jeffrey, Melvin Ingram. Doesn't get any better than that. Clowney did come back. But you look at that 2012 team, some say that was Spurrier's best team. And it probably was, if you kind of think back on it. I mean, they beat the crap out of Georgia, lost by 2 at LSU. The whole team got the flu, and they kind of got beat up at Florida scoreboard-wise. They outgained the Gators. That was a very must-champion game. Florida won 44-11. Gamecocks had more yards. Weird day in the swamp. But they came back, rallied in 12, beat Clemson up there with Dylan Thompson, and then the season ended in that infamous Outback Bowl against Michigan, where Dylan Thompson threw the pass to Bruce Ellington with about 5 seconds left. That was great. I mean, people remember that game for the hit that Clowney put on Vincent Smith when he knocked his helmet off after one of the worst calls in the history of college football. But that team lost a lot of players between 2011 and 2012 stars. It didn't have a lot of depth. So I kind of get back to that, and I'm like, well, in this situation, it could end up being that Carolina's that's kind of the same thing, right? And that team, the point is with wide receiver one, it didn't really have one. Ellington was there, made some plays. Ace Sanders was really good, made some plays. But I thought the worst coaching decision of that year was probably keeping DL Moore in the lineup at the B receiver position, because once Nick Jones took over, Burns High guy, they were pretty good. Nick Jones ended up having a really good career. Nick Jones made a lot of plays. And it was strange to me because Spurrier Sr. was talking Nick Jones up from the day he got there. He came in with Lattimore in 2010. And, he's like, I like Nicky Jones. He sticks his foot in the ground and runs routes. And yeah, he was good. He's a Burns guy. Learned how to run routes. And once they put him in, once we got the Outback Bowl, remember the Outback Bowl that year, they had a lot of big plays early, but they had changed numbers. The players decided to change numbers. Demir Bird was on that team. Busta Anderson kind of had a breakout year. I mean, it was a situation where young players stepped up and played. So, but that team did not have a wide receiver one, so to speak. And I'm fine with that. Now, I said that going into last year that, they're probably not going to have a guy. And then because of injuries and maybe I just was wrong. Maybe it was a very limited receiving core, even without being hurt. But it's hard to know because guys were in and out of the lineup. I mean, here's what happened last year. Mazeo Bennett came in, and they felt like Mazeo was going to start and play a lot as a true freshman, and he did. Last spring, Gage Larvadan was the best new wide receiver of the spring. Okay, keep in mind, Nyck Harbor was not there. Delvon Campbell was not there. In the spring, Vandrevius Jacobs was not there. But Larvadan and Bennett were guys you could kind of count on. So the summer gets here, and Campbell and Jacobs join the team. Harbor comes back, joins the team. We head into the season as observers, thinking, well, it's probably going to be Larvadan. Tyshawn Russell, who never played, had a pretty good spring game. And then all summer, it was Jared Brown, or summer preseason camp. Training camp is what they call it now. I never thought it made sense. John Whittle agrees with me to call it fall camp because there's nothing fall about August. So preseason, it was Jared Brown. Brown goes out against Old Dominion, drops some passes, plays pretty well. Kentucky, LSU. Then he starts getting hurt in and out of the lineup. Well, Larvidan was hurt. Then he's back in, so he starts making some plays and then doesn't. Bennett is pretty consistent. Harbor early on kind of was a ghost, but caught some passes and then got better as the season went on. Back and forth, back and forth. All of a sudden, Delvon Campbell has a great November. Went back and watched there's a really good scouting report video on Lenore Sellers by the Carter Power, I think is his name. Breaks down film, college football. Really good. One of the best, good and bad, goes through. And so he was breaking down Sellers in the Clemson game. And the Delvon Campbell, it was barely a drop. He should have had it. That would have been a big play right before I think maybe before the field goal. Boy, that game, if they'd have lost that game, golly, shot yourself in the foot a bunch. That would have been how that would have felt. So, you had different guys step up at different times, and it was a lot to do with the injury and guys coming in. Beamer says this, these guys, Campbell and Jacobs and Harbor, we didn't have them in spring ball last year. Well, all these freshmen were in spring ball, except Donovan Murph, who will be in accordingly shortly, I guess. And so you sort of look at it, and it's a different situation, but you can't, it's hard to kind of point to a wide receiver one. That's why the folks that felt like the staff should have gone and signed a receiver out of the portal. Now, I don't know who, because I'll look at the receivers in the portal, like the rankings, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know who would have been worth money and also sending a message to some of your young players that you can't count on them and the 4 returning guys. I just, Mike Fury and Shane Beamer, they know this group better than anybody. And, they selected to kind of hold serve. So hey, fine, but I think that's why people, have said, why didn't they go get a guy? Because they want a wide receiver one. And there's nobody you can really point to and say for sure they will be. But I'll say this. The best thing that could happen to South Carolina football this year is for Nyck Harbor to become that guy. I will be honest. I'm not predicting it, but I hear things, right? You hear things. And you kind of look at it and you're like, well, physically as an athlete, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, he's rare. I mean, how many guys are that big and fast? It's like Lenore Sellers, rare. And rarity sometimes produces a rare football player that's hard to stop. Sometimes it doesn't. It just kind of depends on the player. Nyck Harbor to this point has not been that guy. He's been, I've said this before, an outstanding possession receiver because he doesn't have the most, if you just kind of looked at it like scouting report lingo, he doesn't have the most natural hands, kind of fights the ball a bit, but the drops have been limited. I mean, look, man, South Carolina in 18 had 3 guys that were going to play in the NFL. Debo Samuel was one of them. Brian Edwards was another, and Shi Smith was a third. And there was a drop epidemic that year. Josh Vann, a few years back, led the SEC in drops. I mean, people say what they want about Jake Bentley. There were times his receivers just did not help him at all. They were open, the pass was good, and they dropped the ball. Nyck, we haven't seen that out of. Nothing like that. We've seen some drops, but nothing like that. So how can Nyck Harbor become wide receiver one? Well, I think a lot's been made of him not running track and focusing on football. I think by all accounts, when you talk to people around the program, he had a big spring. Got really better, got better this spring, I guess is what they say. And then, the spring game came and Nick returned some kickoffs and I was told he looked fast doing it. I didn't see the video of that. I was also told he was open down the field some in the spring game. Brad Crawford went from 24/7 and said, oh, he wasn't targeted. Seems like he wanted to use that against him a little bit. That's fine. But, you know, we didn't see it in the spring game. And I don't necessarily think you have to. There's a lot of times, I mentioned the spring game last year. There was what Tyshawn Russell looked like the best receiver. DJ Braswell had a good game at running back. We didn't see those guys at all, the whole year. So we know that there's been some spring game heroes that have not necessarily performed well in the season because it's different. And vice versa. We've had some spring games where guys disappeared and the season gets there and they're really good. It just kind of depends on the player. So I'm not holding that against him. So then we move forward. The last thing I saw from Nyck Harbor was him sinking about a 20-foot putt at the Gamecock Bourbon Golf Tournament with my man Cox by 90. That was good. He looked enthusiastic about it. That doesn't mean anything as far as receivers, but Shane Beamer was quoted by one of our media outlets the other day that said it's night and day different with him. And he talked about watching the bowl game tape. This is Beamer, and noticing Harbor ran the same route and blah, blah, blah. So that's a good sign because when you're talking about night and day different, you're also talking about your leading receiver yardage wise from last year, who was good for like 3 or 4 catches a game down the stretch. It wasn't like he started well and then did not end well, or that he was in and out of the lineup. He got consistently better. I think that catch at Alabama toward the end helped him get going a little bit. And then A&M came along, and I don't think he caught a pass against A&M. That was a game Carolina just kind of ran the ball, right? But Vanderbilt came along. Missouri was one of his better games. Good game against Wofford, good game against Clemson, good game in the bowl for Nyck. He as a player in pads, he got some positive momentum and confidence, and confidence gives you a chance to take your physical gifts and let them manifest on the field. So this is the best thing that could happen if Nyck Harbor can become the top go-to guy. I mean, he's a 5-star going into his 3rd year, who changed positions, who had to really start from scratch to learn it. It's not as easy. If you're a natural wide receiver, here's the difference, because folks are like, well, wide receiver is supposed to be easy to play. It is, but, and then people complain about, I need to get him the ball. I mean, I agree, but he's got to get open too. I mean, that's another big part of it. But, I think that when you're talking about a guy like a Mazio Bennett that's played receiver his whole life, right? He does in high school, since middle school, and summers of 7-on-7, running routes on air over and over and over again. Now, Steve Spurrier, when he was at South Carolina and Florida too, and anywhere he's coached, they're real big. Like they literally, we've watched them practice, right? They'll run the same thing over and over, and they'll rep it over and over and over and over again, because the route running in that system he runs is so important. It has to be precise because it's based on timing and read routes and a lot of things. The receivers in that offense, it takes some time to get going. The quarterbacks can pick it up a little quicker. But the receivers, Alshon Jeffrey didn't really start playing until 3 or 4 games. That was that Kentucky game into his freshman year in 2009, and then boom, he took off because he got it. Once you got it, you got it. I don't know about this system and what the receivers kind of entail, but it's not as simple as going out there and playing, right? Just throwing the ball. Okay. I don't know, and when you're learning it from scratch, like Bennett Vandrevius Jacobs caught a lot of balls in high school. They've repped this over and over. Nyck Harbor had not from Gonzaga High School in Washington, D.C. He's a tight end defensive end, athlete, basically, on the field. A lot of defense, a lot of tight end routes, not a lot at receiver. So that takes time, folks. I mean, it's not that easy. And the less you practice, when you're doing track or whatever, the he didn't enroll early either. He was a later guy. The less you practice, the more behind you are. And first season, he didn't come in, you know, until later in the summer. And gosh, he ended up starting down the stretch and playing. And then this past season, he missed because of track, didn't get back till July. Now he's had he played a ton last year. He's had all spring. He's going to have all summer. That's a lot of reps, and reps are important at that position. So I'm looking at it and looking at Shane Beamer's comments based on what I've heard, and I'm like, maybe we're overthinking this. In our quest to not to christen wide receiver one, maybe it's right under our nose. Maybe it's Nyck Harbor. And what would that mean? Well, that would mean a good thing for the Gamecocks, Lenore Sellers, and the offense, because if he comes on, and I've discussed what he needs to take that next step. It's about yards after catch. It's about breaking tackles. It's about turning on the jets with the ball. All of that tends to come with confidence, right? When you have confidence and you're fluid in what you do, when you know the system, all that good stuff, it comes with confidence. And it's not that he's not a confident player, but it did my heart well to see him get open on that fade route against Missouri right before the second touchdown of the game. Of course, he caught the first touchdown on the corner blitzed, and he was wide open. But those types of plays, that's what you kind of envision for a Nyck Harbor. That jump balls, um, him catching a ball in traffic, breaking a tackle, housing it, that kind of thing. It's very beneficial. Yards after catch, we've discussed that. I mean, it has to happen for everybody in the receiving core. But when you have a guy like that's that kind of weapon, as we know from around here, South Carolina's had some 6'5" receivers in the past. It's very beneficial. The question is, will he be a productive Sidney Rice type or a Jeffrey type? They're different players, different athletes. Or will it end up being like, James Adkison back in the day? Ended up getting a cup of coffee in the NFL, and he had some serious drop issues. He was 6'5". Obviously, a world of talent, just could never get him going production-wise. Marcus Robinson back in the day played years in the NFL, Chicago Bears, but he didn't really get good till he got to the NFL. Bigger guy, right? And so if you're South Carolina, you're like, well, and you have a history there. I know those two, Atkinson and Robinson, were probably, some of you are too young to remember that. But look it up, man. Look it up, whippersnappers. Look it up in the Gamecock Encyclopedia Britannica. Anywho, yeah, I mean, so that's it. I mean, will he be like that? Will he be even better? Maybe he'll be like Xavier Legette, who got better and better and better and broke out. That kind of thing. So that would be very beneficial. And like I said, we've talked about needing the yards after catch, playing fast. There's playing fast and being fast. But based on I don't want to say narrative, because that's like narratives are always up for debate. Based on the feedback, I think that it's okay to maybe dream a little about that. I don't necessarily think it's a dream that this elusive wide receiver run, um, it could be right under our noses. Could be the 5-star guy that was a huge recruit from Washington, D.C. back in the class of 2023. I at least think Nyck is going to end up increasing his catch total. I think if he gets to 40 catches this year, hey, that's good. I think the player he already is good enough to help this team. He catches balls and runs routes and is a part of the passing game. But there's all obviously that superstar athletic ability and football potential there. And it looks like, I'm being a little cautious with this. It looks like he's on his way, and that could be everybody's answer. The and look, I think Bennett's going to take a step forward. I think Jared Brown had a really good spring. We saw Vandrevius Jacobs in the spring game, and then you got all those freshmen: Brian Rowe, Malik Clark, Donovan Murph, Lex Cyrus, Pup Sellers. I mean, there's a lot of options there. I mean, it would not shock me at the slightest if Brian Rowe is the lead. We get 3 games in, and Brian Rowe's the guy, right? Because he's also one of those universal feedback guys that everybody says he's good. But I do think Nyck Harbor has a chance. I do. I think it's a real chance, and I think that's a good off-season question to ponder and something that could be potentially very positive for the Gamecocks. Because who doesn't want a 6'5", 230-pound receiver that can fly? I don't know of a coach out there that doesn't. And that's also something I'll add this in completion. That this roster, when you look at it, the receivers, the next guy that can kind of go up and get it, this little taller guy, would be Malik Clark right now. And if you look at the 2026 recruiting, guys like Ryan Mosley and Travis Johnson, they're those 6'3", 6'4" guys. So they need that. They want a bigger boundary guy or whatever. But it could be the big freak that they've got already on campus. And that should make everybody happy if that happens. Not necessarily predicting that, but wanted to ponder it for a while. And all that good stuff. You can also ponder how to get excellent golf gear, merchandise, accessories. I don't want to say gear. It's not gear. It's golf merchant accessories from our friends at Palmetto Golf and Belt, palmettogolfing.com. Lots of good stuff for the right price. You can get on there. Go to palmettogolfing.com. Proud sponsor of Coffee of thebigspur.com. Chief Sports. Brandon helps with all that. Gamecock owned and operated. Also, don't forget about buying coffee to support NFL, NIL at GamecockCoffee.com. So that's fun to talk about Nyck Harbor today. Dare to dream. And I don't know that dream's too far off. Sometimes when coaches talk and praise guys, it's to get their confidence going. And then you kind of find out, well, kind of the same old guy, just a little more polished. And that's fine too if that happens with Nyck. If Nyck, like I said, he's not, 4 catches a game, 3 or 4 catches, that's 36 balls. He went from 12 to 26. It's natural progression. And I think that's fine. He's going to help the football team. Don't get me wrong. But, and I don't think the NCAA video game was fair at all. But if he can get to where, there's tangible display of his physical gifts, right? And again, house it, run off and leave people in pads, that kind of thing. Because I still maintain that so far, based on what we've seen, not including the spring game this year, but in games through his career, he is fast, but he doesn't play fast. He plays fast enough. And he got better and better and better as he got more confident. Maybe we just didn't notice it. But man, what a target for Lenore Sellers. And what a beautiful thing it would be if that game against Virginia Tech to open the season, Sunday, August 31st, during the Notre Dame Miami game that's on ABC that night, if they're consistently showing Nyck Harbor highlights. And the whole country's like, oh, yeah, he made a great decision going to South Carolina. Not that they say he's not, but I think that's one to keep an eye on for sure. Ask 12 different people out there, and they'll probably give 12 different answers as to who the best wide receiver will be this year. But, the whole point of this, sometimes it's the obvious choice, the one that's right under our nose, the the guy with the gifts that was highly ranked and all that good stuff. And I think based on intel that that's possible. Possible is one of those P words with potential, right? But I certainly think it's possible. All right. Be sure to check out the show today. John Whittle on all things. We're going to talk about, I'm sure, baseball and softball quite a bit. Mike Morgan is in to co-host, last I checked. And Phil and I will be along on the show afterward to have another fun, zany episode of Inside the Gamecocks. The show. Download the Chief Sports app. And we'll holla at you soon.